Hey guys, hope things are going well for you back at home or wherever you may be at. We're keeping busy here, doing stuff around the house, trying to connect with you guys and whatever other projects we got going on. So I hope last week that the video was helpful, that it prompted some good conversation, at least between yourself and with God. And so we're going to give this a try again this week. Again, let me know if this is helpful, if this isn't helpful, because I want to do what is best for you guys. I want to be doing what is most beneficial for you. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Today we're going to be looking at Galatians chapter 5, verses 1 through 15. It's a bit of a longer chunk of text, not as long as last week, but there's a lot of stuff here that I think is really important for us as Christians to understand. So if you'll turn with me to Galatians chapter 5, starting in verse 1. For freedom Christ has set us free. Stand firm, therefore, and do not submit again to the yoke of slavery. Look, I, Paul, say to you that if you accept circumcision, Christ will be of no advantage to you. I testify again to every man who accepts circumcision that he is obligated to keep the whole law. You are severed from Christ, you who would be justified by the law, you have fallen from grace. For through the Spirit, by faith, we ourselves eagerly wait for the hope of righteousness. For in Christ Jesus neither circumcision nor uncircumcision counts for anything, but only faith working through love. You are running well. Who hindered you from obeying the truth? This persuasion is not from him who calls you. A little leaven leavens the whole lump. You have confidence in the Lord that you will take no. I have confidence in the Lord that you will take no other view, and that the one who is troubling you will bear the penalty, whoever he is. But if I, brothers, still preach circumcision, why am I still being persecuted? In that case, the offense of the cross has been removed. I wish those who unsettle you would emasculate themselves. For you are called to freedom, brothers, only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. For the whole law is fulfilled in one word: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. But if you bite and devour one another, watch out that you are not consumed by one another. Galatians is called Paul's angry letter. I think this passage that we're looking at today is a very good piece of evidence to that. You can just begin to feel the anger and that displeasure and the disappointment in Paul towards the Galatian Christians and just how they have fallen away, how they've been pulled away from the truth that he originally preached to them. But it's also interesting how he has this anger, but he begins to talk about freedom. So that's a lot of what he talks about here in this passage. So we'll go ahead and start talking about that. As I've been reading through this and taking notes and trying to figure out what it is that God wants you guys to hear. So I'm just going to go ahead and start talking through that stuff, and hopefully there's something good here that you can utilize for your own relationship with God. So in verse 1, he says, for freedom's sake, Christ has set us free. What he's saying is Jesus set us free with absolutely no demands to us, on us, for us. There's no new slavery, but he has set us free so that we could be free. A phrase often used in Christianity is, I'm a slave for Christ. And I think that is wrong terminology. The slave doesn't have a choice, but the son or the daughter does. In the story of the prodigal son, you have a son who goes to his father and says, I want my inheritance now, give it to me, and then leaves. He had the choice to leave. He had the choice to go out and experience all of the freedom the world had to offer, but he did so without any security. He had his money, he completely disregarded his family, and he had nothing left once his money ran out. He lost all of his security. Once his personal security had left and hard times came, then he returned home by his own choice to work and to live. We also have choice. I think a more accurate term instead of slave would be in the Greek diakonos, or as we understand today, deacon, a servant. We are not people that are forced into serving, but we do so because of our own accord, because of our choice. In Acts chapter 6, the apostles called together the disciples, not just all the Christians, not just the followers of the way, but specifically the disciples. And the distinction here, because, when I say that, somebody might be going, well, what's the difference between the apostles and the disciples? Because the disciples are, the 12 disciples. There's a distinction there. The apostles are ones chosen by Jesus. Disciples are ones that chose to follow. And so the apostles, the original 11 plus Matthias, call the disciples to them. Now, there is a distinction as to why they're calling disciples and not just Christians. And what I think it is that the disciples are people who chose to serve the others. And the reason I think this is because of more of what happens in this story. So there's an issue that is arising in the local church in Jerusalem at the very beginning of Acts. And what happens is some people are being taken care of. Another minority group is not being taken care of. And so they go to the apostles and they say, listen, these people are not being taken care of. Think, for example, maybe like the youth group at your church is being taken care of, or maybe the elderly isn't being taken care of, but everyone else is being served by, the leadership of the church. And so that fringe group goes to the leadership and says, listen, we are not being taken care of unlike everyone else. And so the apostles go, this is something we don't need to be doing. We need to be devoting ourselves to prayer and to preaching the word. So they called together the disciples, the ones who have been serving, and say, listen, I want you to choose 7. Choose 7 of you to be in charge, to lead the service, to delegate the service so that everyone is taken care of. The role of these 7, I think, is to lead those that we're serving, to make sure that those who are being marginalized were not being skipped over. Those that were leading chose to serve because they had the freedom to serve and the freedom to choose. And so when we say, for freedom, Christ has set us free, we are saying that Christ gave us freedom with no obligation whatsoever. But as we see later in this passage, because of our love, we utilize our freedom and we have the choice to serve those around us, to love those around us. Looking at verses 2 and 3, I'm going to put this in a little bit more of today's understanding as opposed to talking about circumcision, because that's not an issue that we really run into. So what I see Paul saying is, you who say, I am saved because I go to church. I am saved because I am baptized. I'm saved because I go to ministry thing XYZ. I'm saved because I lead Bible studies, or I'm saved because I'm a leader with this specific ministry. You people who say, I am saved because I do these things, have no salvation in Jesus. And that is a harsh truth that we need to understand. If you sit there and you say, I am saved because I do X, Y, Z, because I go to church, because I take communion, because I'm baptized, because I do this, because I do that, you have no salvation in Jesus. Period. Those types of people are relying on their own works for justification and salvation. These people are saying, I make this mark because I do these things. And that is wrong. If you have that mentality, then you must be perfect in all that you do for all time. If you're a Christian because you claim, if you claim that you're a Christian because you do Christian things, then you must be perfect to receive salvation. You must be justified and righteous by your own means. That means any sin that you have committed in the past has already negated your perfection now. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. Or right now. I forgot where I was at in my notes. So if you have that mentality of, I'm Christian because of the Christian things that I do, and like I said, you must be perfect in all that you do. And even one single sin when you are 2 years old, 5 years old, 12 years old, 15 years old, any one little sin, white lie that you've told, any time you have had impure thoughts, anytime you have broken the law, anytime you have done something to destroy the kingdom, to rebel against God, anytime you do any of that, then your righteousness cannot be had on your own. And so you may counter with, well, I have grace for when I fail. But if you're trying to have it both ways, then you can't have it either way. You're saved by grace because of your faith in Jesus as the Christ and the work of God, or you have been and continue to be perfect your entire life. And let me tell you, nobody has been perfect except for Jesus alone. Because it is by his righteousness that we can enter into a restored relationship with God. And so the work that you do, it does not make you a Christian. It does not make you saved. If those works did, then Jesus died for absolutely nothing. The work that you do should be done because you are a Christian, because you are saved. The action should be motivated by the relationship. The relationship is not established by the action. And then he says in verse 4, if you claim to be saved because of what you do, then you are cut off from Jesus. You have rejected grace. And this is further proof of the point that was just made. If you strive for salvation by what you do, then there's no place for you and no role for grace in your life. You have absolutely rejected it. What it seems like we're desiring is we're in this culture that says, I'm saved because I go to church. That's more or less what we want, because that's very simple. I go to church on Sundays, therefore I'm a Christian, therefore I am saved. But that is the absolute opposite way of looking at that. It should be, I am saved, therefore I'm a Christian, therefore I go to church, therefore I do these things. But what we are really desiring is we desire to be righteous. We desire to be right. Think about anytime you get into an argument, it's not often that someone will go, you know what, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. You're right on this one. That takes a very humble stance to do. Most people will fight tooth and nail. Hi, I'm one of those people. I will fight tooth and nail. Even halfway through an argument, I realize, you know what, I'm wrong and the other person's right. But I'm going to continue to argue my point because I don't want to be wrong. I want to be right. I want to be righteous. But we can't be righteous of our own accord. Thankfully, we have the Spirit of God living in us. We have God himself living in us, which we have received because of faith. Then with the Spirit, we are eager for our hope of righteousness to be fulfilled. Because of the Spirit, we acknowledge that we cannot be righteous on our own. But we desire it all the more so that we can be even more in union with God. We don't desire to be righteous to build ourselves up, to be prideful. We desire to be righteous because we understand the more righteous we are, the more in union we are with God, the more reconciled we are with God. We recognize that true and complete righteousness has not come to us yet. We have not been completed. We have not been perfected yet. But we greatly desire it to happen, and the Spirit of God fills us with anticipation for its coming. And we have hope and we have faith that the complete and perfected righteousness of Jesus himself will be given to us at the time that God deems it to happen. And so we just need to wait patiently, with anticipation, with hope for that to come. This Spirit and this hope, this anticipation can only be found in Jesus. There's no other way. And it's not received because of what we do, because of works, but it's received because of surrender and faith. This can only be found in Jesus. God's love made manifest, given to us, which we then return. Love leads to faith. In verses 7 through 12, there's a paragraph right there. Paul is saying, you were doing so well. Who was it that led you astray? Who whispered lies in your ears? Even if it's a small percent of you that have bought into the lies, it spreads. It always spreads. Those that are leading you wrong will bear the penalty, one way or another. In our culture, we desire simplicity. We desire tangible results, the ability to have a marker to say whether or not we're doing well. I'm just as guilty of this as anyone else. Like at the end of every semester, usually we sit down and go, all right, what did we do well? What didn't we do well? Please tell me that I've been doing a good job, because I just want to know that I'm doing well for you guys. And also kind of make myself a little bit more prideful, because look how great of a minister I am. But we desire, these marks. We desire these measurements to say, I'm doing well, I'm not doing well. This is how I can improve. This is how I can be better. These are my faults. These are my problems. This is what I need to be doing better. But the appeal, I think, is this. In Christianity, we have two sides of a coin. Not even two sides of a coin. We have, two different ways that we can try to do things. The more easier one in our mind, the one that we think is oftentimes a lot easier to manage, is the idea of act accordingly and be saved. The other option of that is have faith and be saved, then act accordingly. The appeal of act accordingly and be saved is so much simpler, because there is an end result there. One, that we achieve, and two, we can say, by doing these things, I receive. And that's just a lot easier. You work so many hours, you get so much money. You do the work, then you receive. As opposed to, I'm going to give you this money and I expect you to do this work. That's kind of what I do. I don't have a set list of responsibilities that, okay, these are the things that I have done. These are the projects I have to get done. I don't have to sit there and say, all right, I need to have this much done for this one company and this much done for this other company and blah, 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 whatever. And then if I do all these things, I get paid this amount of money. Mine is, okay, we're going to give you this money and we want you to do this work. Well, I've already received the money, so then I don't really need to do the work, right? Because I can just have the money and do whatever I want. For freedom, I have been set free. But because someone has put faith in me and loved me and said, I'm going to give you this, I desire to not put their sacrifice and their effort to waste. And so I do the work to the best of my ability. I may only get paid X amount of dollars, but I may do 3X amount of work. But that's okay. Because for God so loved me that I do this for him, that I love him this much. And I'm not trying to say that our work is greater than what God has done for us. What I'm saying is, we shouldn't cut ourselves short. We shouldn't allow ourselves to be cut short. It's so much simpler to say, I have acted well, therefore I am saved, than it is to say, I am saved, so I act well. One places faith in the work of God and God alone, and the other places faith in oneself. I have faith that I will get this work done and receive this. Verse, I have faith that God has done this, and so I will pay him back by doing this. I will honor him. I will worship him by doing this. When I was growing up, a lot of times in Sunday school, in youth group and whatever, there'd always be someone that says, oh, when you die and get to heaven, there's going to be a video of your life, and God's going to sit there with you and critique every last thing that you've done and praise you for all the good things that you've done. There's not going to be that video. There's not going to be God sitting there with, the old, tube TV with a VCR from, elementary school days when they rolled it in to, watch a movie on a rainy day for recess or whatever. There's not going to be that. And there's not going to be a counter in the corner that counts every good thing you've done. And if you made this specific score, you get into heaven. There's not going to be that. When we get there, there will be the book of life. And in the book of life will be the names of those who put their trust in Jesus and Jesus alone. To have faith in yourself is to make yourself a slave to yourself, to a higher standard, to the perfection, to the law, to self-improvement. None of these things will get you into heaven. None of these things are of worth to God to be reconciled to him. None of these things are of worth to God to be reconciled to him. We are called to freedom, and our freedom should not be used as a chance to sin. Our freedom should lead us to choose to serve those around us because of our love for them. Again, the relationship motivates the action. The action does not establish the relationship. If you are to fulfill the law, not be saved by it, but to fulfill the law, just as Jesus did, love your neighbor as yourself. Count others as more significant than yourself. Be humble. Set aside your pride. Put to death your flesh. And love. And that's what I got for today. I don't have any discussion questions to give you right now. I'm going to work on those probably this week and drop them in the group for you. So, again, I hope this is beneficial for you guys. If it is, let me know. If it isn't, let me know. We can try something else. Maybe we can try Zoom, or we can try whatever. I'm game for doing whatever is most beneficial to you guys. So, thank you. We miss you. We love you guys. We're praying for you. If there's anything you need prayer about, shoot us a text, drop it in the group. However you want to get a hold of us, let us know. We want to be praying for you specifically about what is going on in your lives. So yeah, thanks guys. Like I said, we miss you, and see you later.